The Truth About Goblins. Chapter 27. "Steamroller!" yelled Kit, falling onto Annie. "Get off!" she snapped. She kicked him onto the floor, where he landed with a thud. "What?" he said, laughing. "It's a sleepover tradition." "It's a crappy tradition." She groaned and pulled the blankets over her head. "Let me sleep." He jumped to his feet and started stretching. "It's already late. You shouldn't be sleeping at this hour, or we'll waste my day off." "You're off today?" she mumbled, poking her head out from under the sheets. "Today and tomorrow," he replied. "I'm gonna go get some breakfast." She watched as he bolted from the room, already on his way downstairs. Where the heck did he get the energy? Reluctantly, she slipped out of bed and fumbled around for her clothes. When she couldn't find them, she decided to follow suit and go downstairs as well. "Good morning, Annie," said Ophelia, turning her head as she entered the kitchen. "You look like you could use a coffee." "No, thank you," she replied. "I don't drink coffee." She looked at Kit, sitting at the table and munching on a large oatmeal cookie. "Do you know where my clothes are?" "In the wash," she said. "I have a clean set on the bench over there. They might be big, but they'll do for now." "Thanks." She walked over to the clothes, lying in a neat pile. "I think I'll go take a shower." "Yeah, you do that," said Kit. "You smell like a stinky monkey." She whacked him on the head as she passed by. "At least I don't look like one." He stuck his tongue out as she disappeared into the next room. "So, what's the plan for today?" said Ophelia. "You have the whole night off, don't you?" "Yuppers," he said, taking another bite. "I'm not sure what to do, actually. The market's gonna be on hangover today. Nothing too exciting going on." "Why don't you go on a picnic or something?" she suggested. "Really, Mother?" He rolled his eyes. "Talk about a snore fest." "You used to love picnics," she said. "Don't you remember? We would go out a ways and take the exit above ground to the woods. You and Okami loved to swim by the waterfall. Don't you miss that?" "Meh," he shrugged. "I guess it was kinda cool, way back when. But it'd be a letdown after the festival last night, don't you think?" He swallowed another bite and reached for a glass of orange juice. "It'd be way cooler to visit that old castle." She cast him a stern look. "I would much rather you didn't. It's all the way at the edge of the forest. You wouldn't make it home for supper. Besides," she turned back to her work, "it's someone else's property. I don't like the idea of you snooping around an old castle in the middle of the night." He rolled his eyes a second time. "It's not dangerous, Mother, and I bet Annie would like to see it a lot more than some old waterfall." "Well, why don't you ask before making up your mind?" She started stacking more vials into a large case by the stove. "I'm sure she would love to see the forest at night. And if you go on a picnic, you could use up the rest of the groceries before they go bad." He shrugged once more and continued his breakfast in silence. It was only when Annie had finished her shower and entered the kitchen that he spoke again. "Yo," he said. "Wanna go on a picnic?" "Right now?" she said. "Let me eat breakfast first." "I meant for lunch. Mother suggested we grab Saphira and eat in the forest." "Wait, do you mean a real forest? Like above ground?" "It's quite nice, Annie," said Ophelia. "Especially at night. There's a beautiful spring with a waterfall just a walk away once you get up there." "That sounds cool," she said, grabbing a cookie from the plate on the table. "But do you really think Saphira's up for it? She's probably still sleeping, or she might be on duty for the shop." "Bah, Timothy won't mind," said Kit. "I bet we could bully him into letting her come along." "Fine," she said. Maybe we could grab one of those special teas before we head out. Sounds like a plan, he said. Take your cookie with you and let's go. He jumped up and gave Ophelia a peck on the cheek. Later, Mother. Be back soon. I'll leave the picnic basket on the table, she said, preparing to head out as well. Kit and Annie bounded up the steps towards the third-floor window, eager to start another exciting night. Once on the street, they noted that the crowds were thinner than usual. Looks like everyone's still recovering from last night, she remarked. Ha, he scoffed. Recovering's for the weak, especially when you've got the day off. They soon arrived at Timothy's Teas, eager for a cuppa with Sapphira, but they were surprised and disappointed to find that the shop was closed. What's going on here? Said Annie. She noticed an envelope taped to the door. What's this? He grabbed the envelope. To Annie and Kit. Know anyone named Annie and Kit? Give me that. She tore the letter from his hands and opened the envelope. What's it say? Timothy's got a lead, she said, her eyes jumping over the scrawled message. They've gone to the woods to meet someone. She says they'll be gone for a day or two. Bull-oney, he said, grabbing the letter to read for himself. Just like that? Didn't even invite us to come along? He pushed it back into her hands. Phooey. Whatever, she said. We can still have that picnic, right? Yeah, he said, turning from the closed shop. But I'm gonna die from the suspense. You think those two will be all right, out in the forest all alone? Heck, I'm not worried, she said. Not as long as Sapphira's there. She could take on anything. He shrugged. I guess so. Back at the apartment, the two packed a full basket for lunch and prepared to set off on their picnic. This time they had to travel to the other end of the market, where the arbiters held a gate to the forest above ground. After explaining their intentions, the guards let them both through without any trouble. The tunnel to the forest was long and dark, but there were torches on the wall to light the way, and it wasn't long before the two reached a stone staircase reaching towards the woods above. Emerging from a hidden cave underneath a pair of massive boulders, the two of them climbed out of the darkness and into the forest. Ophelia had been right when she said the woods were beautiful at night. Even though autumn was fast approaching, most of the leaves were still on the branches overhead, and the fireflies had not yet succumbed to the night's chilly air. Neat, said Annie, as Kit helped her to her feet. She took a deep breath. It's nice to be above ground again, away from all those earthquakes. Yeah, it's okay, he admitted. Once in a while, anyway. Keep your eyes out for the path. Once we find it, we can get to the waterfall. It didn't take long for them to stumble onto the path, even in the dark. Annie had worried that the picnic might turn out to be eerie, since they were going for lunch late at night. But the darkness that covered the trees and shrubbery was not the darkness from the mines. Even through the thick foliage overhead, the light from the moon illuminated their path, and their way to the waterfall was well lit. The waterfall itself wasn't all that high, but it was still a sight to take in. Flowing down into a clear pool of water, it shimmered through the darkness, sparkling under the faint light of the moon. They couldn't resist reaching across the pond to touch it, watching the water run through their fingers. It was the perfect backdrop to a late-night picnic. Unpacking the loads of food they had brought with them, the two had a great big lunch as they took in the sight of the waterfall and the surrounding forest. And despite his earlier doubts, Kit was having a blast. He had a million questions about life above ground, and Annie was only too happy to share stories from her own bizarre childhood. At last, when they had nearly gone through all the food, he pulled off his shirt and jeans and approached the pond. "What are you doing?" asked Annie, watching as he dipped a toe in the water.
Going swimming.
In your underpants, she exclaimed.
Yeah, why not?
Because you'll get wet? She piled the leftovers back into the picnic basket. We didn't bring any towels. He stood above the pool and looked in, amused by his own reflection.
Actually, I did bring some. They're at the bottom.
Oh, so you brought towels but didn't think of bringing a swimsuit? She rolled her eyes.
What? Underwear's fine,
he said.
It's dark. No one will see.
Except for me.
Nah, I trust ya.
He stretched out his arms and prepared to jump.
And I promise I won't look either.
Whoa, 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 she said, getting to her feet. Don't think for a minute that I'm going in. I bet the water's freezing.
Only one way to find out.
He took a deep breath and jumped.
Cannonball!
She screamed, dodging the splash. As he came back up, she ran to the edge of the water. You are so dead, you little twerp.
Gotta catch me to kill me.
She groaned, stripping down to her underwear. Hey, I thought you said you wouldn't look. He laughed and ducked underwater. Not a second after surfacing, she ambushed him, sending a wall of water above his head as she jumped into the pool. Yikes, she exclaimed. It's freezing.
You'll get used to it.
He found his footing and stood upright. She noticed that the pool wasn't very deep. You could have learned to swim here, she said. You should probably get that under your belt, just in case. He shrugged and fell back into the water.
As long as I can see the bottom, I'm okay.
He turned and headed for the waterfall.
You want to see the secret nook in the back of this thing?
The two splashed around for hours, shivering from the cold as they left the pond and wrapped themselves in the towels. While they were drying off, he reached into the basket and pulled out an unexpected treat. What's that? Said Annie, pointing to the thermos in his hand.
Hot cocoa, he said. It's the best after a cold swim.
They relished the treat as they waited for their underwear to dry. Eventually, with everything packed up and ready to go, the two pulled their clothes back on and prepared to make their way home.
This was way cooler than I thought it would be,
admitted Kit, a satisfied smile on his face.
Almost as cool as the haunted castle.
The haunted what? Annie was immediately interested. You saying there's a castle around here?
Other side of the forest, he said. We'll have to sneak out and see it sometime.
But she was already excited. Can't we go now? We've got a bit of food left, and we're already in the forest. Without a moment's pause, her imagination was running away with her, picturing a gloomy castle overlooking the woods. We haven't got anything else to do, right? About to reply, Kit was interrupted by the sound of rustling leaves. The two stopped dead in their tracks. What was that? Whispered Annie. He didn't answer, listening to the noise. Something was crawling along the branches, slowly approaching the two wary kids waiting below. A head swung down from the foliage overhead. The two kids jumped. But they gathered their nerves as they were greeted by an upside-down face. It was the young girl they had met in the caves back at the market. Hiya, boss, she said, saluting Kit as she hung from the branches.
Oh, Shady,
he said, relieved that it had been a friend amongst the branches.
What's going on? Why are you here?
Without warning, another face swung down from the trees. Unfortunately, Shady's brother was not so lucky and ended up falling from the branches. Down he came with a thud. Ouchie, he exclaimed, getting to his feet. Butterfingers, said Shady, shaking her dark pigtails.
You too?
Said Kit, confused.
What's the word? Did Raven send you two up here?
Yeah, boss, said the boy, straightening himself out. How did you find us here? Said Annie, amazed at their arrival.
The murder knows all, sees all,
said Shady with a smirk.
Except for this Donovan character. Seems a slippery chap, he does. So,
said Kit.
Any new developments? That's what we comes to tell you, boss,
said the boy, pulling out an old piece of paper from his pocket.
We couldn't find him, but we knows he's been a-talking to some seedy folk round the market.
Really? Said Kit, raising an eyebrow.
What do you mean, seedy?
I dunno, boss.
It's just what Raven told us,
he replied.
But she says that if you want to find Donovan, you ought to pay one of 'em seedy folk a visit.
He passed the old paper to Kit.
One of 'em's in the East Woods now, hiding out in a cabin all secret-like. But the murder knows all, sees all.
A cabin in the East Woods? That's where Timothy and Sapphira went, said Annie.
You's talking about the tall guy and his short blondie? Said Shady. We saw 'em headed past this way some hours ago. Think they'd be heading for that swanky chalet up by the creek.
She held out her hand.
I can marks it up on the map if you want.
Kit handed the map over to Shady. Still hanging upside down, she scrawled a little marker on the paper and handed it back to him.
And Raven says thanks a bunch, she added. Jay's doing fine now. Still sleeping lots, but at least he don't throw up anymore.
That's good to hear, said Annie. Kit seemed relieved as well.
Three's this, said the boy. Raven says be careful. Says this Donovan fella's in knee-deep trouble. Says there's rumors about some babies being stoled, along with some magician who's after the kid. Says there's even been some, mischief, added Shady. So keep them eyes open, boss?
We will, promised Kit.
Say hi to Jay for me. Will do, boss,
said the boy, reaching his hands towards Shady. Later, she said, miraculously swinging both of them into the safety of the branches. Once the two had disappeared, Kit turned his attention to the map. It was crudely drawn, but still clear. There were even extra red lines showing various shortcuts to where Timothy and Sapphira's cottage rested in the woods.
Gosh, they're kind of far,
remarked Annie. Even with the shortcuts, it'll take hours.
What do you mean?
Asked Kit. I mean to get there, you doofus. She took the map from his hands and inspected it more closely. Like I said before, we still have some food in the basket. If we leave now, we can get there a couple hours before sunrise.
You're serious, aren't you? He said.
Don't you think they'll be all right on their own? I just want to be sure, she said. Wouldn't it suck if they came back empty-handed when somebody who might have answers is so close?
But maybe that's why they're out there in the first place. Maybe they already know.
But what if they don't? Don't you think we have to make sure?
I don't think we have to do anything, he grumbled. Not right now, anyway.
But Kit, this might be our only chance. And we're already out here, and it's only a few hours away. She gazed at him with puppy dog eyes. Please, Kitsune, please.
Ugh.
He grabbed the map.
This is backwards. I'm the one that gets us into trouble.
Well, my turn had to come eventually, she said, happily embarking towards the distant cabin. Just think of this as a substitute for seeing that old castle. Besides, it'll be fun.
Oh, yeah. Nothing says fun like a 5-hour walk through the woods at night. How happy do you think Timothy's gonna be when we show up at his cozy cottage uninvited?
I think he'll be touched when he realizes how much we care about his baby, she said. He's human, remember? I bet he'll get all mushy on the spot. The conversation continued long into their trek. Neither of them were certain how long it would take to get to the cabin, but the two kept up their pace, making the time go by a bit faster than they had expected. Even Kit felt his curiosity grow as they approached their destination, wondering if this new clue would lead them to Timothy's missing child. At the same time, he found himself unable to shake off Shady's advice. What did she say? Something about mischief. He had to wonder. What exactly were they diving into? Hey, hi, I'm your narrator, Miranda Eastwood, also the author of The Truth About Goblins. If you liked this chapter, remember to add, follow, or subscribe to this channel so you can hear the next one. And if you didn't like this chapter, oh well, I can't really do anything about that. In any case, I just thought I'd let you know about my Patreon. You can check it out if you'd like to throw some support my way. It would mean a lot to me. Not to mention there's loads of extra exclusive content that I only post on Patreon. While I'm at it, I'll mention that The Truth About Goblins is now available as a complete audiobook, and you can get it wherever you get your audiobooks. Thanks for listening.